Indubitably. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of In the Blender with your host, Shake Money. And today I have a special guest, a real special guest. He is one of my favorite content creators from the 5 Reasons and those Locked On Canes, whatever. You know, I'm going to give a shout out, real talk. The Canes, women's basketball, the Canes and FAU are in the Final Four. I think that's amazing. You know what I mean? I really do, because at the end of the day, I'm really rooting for either one, because at the end of the day, whoever wins that championship will be the second team to win a national championship for basketball. Of course, we all know who the first team was, you know. But anyway, I've been doing this since February 16th. And I've had a blast. This is episode number 7, man. And it's a blur. The reason I did this is I wanted to find out why Dolphins fans became Dolphin fans. Me personally, it was in my DNA. So what can I tell you, man? As a matter of fact, Larry K, I'm going to be in the blender. Larry K is going to be doing the interviewing. And later on, you're going to find out why I became a Dolphin fan. But before we bring this man on, because I know he's restrained for time, I want to give a shout out to the team that represents the 305. That university, we all know the university that represents the 305, the U. FIU. Because we all know they represent the 786. I'm just kidding. Listen. If anybody was offended by that joke, we have this form. You fill it out, and we'll send you a nice cream. But anyway, without further ado, the one, the only, Alex Donno. Appreciate you for coming on, brother.
Shake, I can't thank you enough for having me on, and I can't thank you enough for supporting my work and tolerating me, even though I show up to your show wearing all gear. Like I did it just to push your buttons too. I know you love those Gators, you love that swamp, but yeah, I got to celebrate this Final Four run. And man, it's so good.
I don't blame you, bro. At the end of the day, man, my house. I'm the only one. I'm the the lone wolf in my house. Everybody else in my house are Kane fans. So
really,
yeah.
Well, good for them. You got some smart family members at least.
I know it skips a generation, I'm told. Oh man. Well, before we get to shout out to some of the chat members. Kenna Ranking, what's going on? Justin, what's going on? And the first in the building, Scott Jackson. So before we get to brass tacks here, Stephen D had this comment, and I would really like to get your take. If Tua wins this championship, does he surpass Dan Marino in your opinion?
Oh man, maybe not for me personally, but I would say yeah. And listen, and I say that not to disrespect Tua. I say that, and we're going to get into this when we talk about my Dolphins fandom, but Marino was my childhood. Like Dan Marino was my childhood. So for me personally, Tua gets into the league when I'm in my, mid-30s. I don't know if he'll ever pass Marino for me, but in terms of just the Dolphins history books, getting the Dolphins a ring for the first time since 1973, there's definitely an argument to be made there. And listen, man, I've spoken a little critically of Tua in the past, mostly because of his inconsistency to actually stay on the field. But if he can stay on the field and help the Dolphins win a Super Bowl, I am all in.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, CBA3, what's going on? I forgot to say my signature.
Morning, Your Majesty. It is another beautiful day in Zamunda.
But no, so what made you become a Dolphin fan?
Well, I like the graphic you put up earlier about the DNA. It's in my DNA as well, for the most part. Being a lifelong South Floridian. Like My father, definitely a Dolphins fan before I was born. My mother couldn't really care less about pro football. She is a college football fan. But, since growing up in South Florida, born in the early 80s, I caught the bug primarily because of Marino, right? I was definitely into the Miami Hurricanes first because they were actually winning championships in the 80s and the Dolphins weren't. But there was just something so electric turning the TV on Sundays. And this was back before they had Sunday Ticket and the NFL package. So I'm primarily watching my Miami Dolphins play on Sundays. And every now and then my father would take me and my sister to a game, not every year, once every couple of years, we'd go to a game, something like that.
Any in the Orange Bowl?
No, I didn't go to a game until they were in Joe Robbie. I missed the Orange Bowl. As far as going to games, I missed the Orange Bowl era with the Dolphins. So it was only going to games in Joe Robbie back then. But growing up down here, I did know some bandwagon Cowboys fans that I went to school with, in the early 90s and stuff like that. But it was hard for me not to catch the bug because Marino was just my guy.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah. And actually, I was a casual fan. It's like, for instance, I'm a casual Marlins fan. I mean, I don't root for them. I probably can name a handful of players on the team. But and that's how I am with the Panthers and the Heat. I'm a little bit more of a fan because it's easier to remember only 5 people. But as far as but what made me, and that's how I was. I was a casual Dolphin fan, and what made me a diehard Dolphin fan was Brian Cox.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why Buffalo Bills I have a deep disdain for.
Well, and I can give you another one because it wasn't just strictly Marino. I can't say it was only him because I can remember when I was in the 3rd grade, we had an assembly at my school, elementary school, and this was around, had to have been either 92 or 93, something like that. So this was, I was kind of into it, but John Offerdahl was a guest speaker at my elementary school, and he talked all about I went to a Christian school. He talked a lot about his faith. He talked about his I don't know if he was just getting into the bagel business at that point, but he was talking about all that stuff, and I found him to be really inspiring. All the kids in the school got a chance to meet him really quick after the assembly, which was really cool. So that was one of the things, like actually getting some FaceTime with a player, because I wasn't in the same room with Marino until I was a grown-up covering sports for a living. But 9-year-old or 8-year-old me got a chance to meet John Offerdahl in person. So that was another one. I think it's memories like that. And people they don't realize how important that stuff is, right? When players when they either get recognized publicly, they're out to dinner or out at a shopping mall or something, or if they're like Offerdahl and they speak at someone's school and they get a chance to meet these kids, that just makes such a big impression on kids, right? Like, my son has had a chance to meet a couple of athletes before, a couple of Hurricanes players, and his eyes just light up and he gets all into it. I remember being the same way when I was a kid. Like, that's something that can make you a fan. Like, as a grown man, and maybe I'm a little bit jaded because I'm lucky enough to encounter so many athletes, so I might be a little bit jaded. But for kids especially, you get a chance to meet some of these players in person, and that goes such a long way. And that's why for these athletes, and I know so many of these guys who used to play for the Dolphins, like, I do a show with Troy Stratford, former Miami Dolphin running back, on 5 Reasons. And he always says it, like, you never know what kind of an impression you're going to make on someone. So if a kid comes up to you, you always want to be at your best and you always want to be accommodating because you're making memories for these kids.
And I know you're probably like, damn, you're telling your son, you know what? You're probably meeting a lot more than I did when I got to meet when I was a kid, probably.
Yeah, he's off to a pretty good start, and he'll even he'll meet he's met like a high school recruit before, like, and nowadays these high school players look as big as some of the pro players did when I was a kid. These guys are gigantic now.
Yeah,
he doesn't care. He'll meet a high school recruit, 17-year-old, like a 6'3" quarterback, and he goes crazy. Like, he loves it.
That's awesome. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I became a Gator fan was because when I was in high school, one of my substitute teachers, his name was Mr. Scrivella, he played defensive back for the Florida Gators. Wow. And I couldn't stand him at first. And then, I grew up I grew to like him. We grew on each other, and that's kind of where it started. But yeah, I agree with you, man. When you meet a player, it's like in this era of sports, there are more I think more people are fans of players than teams nowadays, I think.
Yeah, and I don't really love that, but I guess I understand it because there's kind of two ways to look at that, right? Because for me, I always grew up being a fan of teams. Like I never changed allegiances, right? Like I
Yeah.
always stuck with, basically the local South Florida teams are all the ones that I root for. And I know a lot of people who are like our age, they get upset when players come and go. So they're like, that's why I root for a team, because you never know if this guy's going to be here for more than 2, 3, 4 years. I think a lot of the kids nowadays, they look at it the other way. They're like, well, if I love LeBron James, like, I don't know, he's going to be on 3, 4 teams in his career. I'm just, I'm going to support him wherever he goes instead of, why would I become a Cavs fan? He's just going to leave in a couple years, or a Heat fan or a Lakers, he's going to leave. I think that's the way that, like it or not, I think that's the way, the generation of kids and teenagers look at it, where we say, well, I love my team, so I'm not going to get too attached to players because players come and go. They say, I love these players, I'm not going to get too attached to any team.
And what's funny is, I agree, because you would think that Laramie Tunsil and Mika Fitzpatrick, when we draft them are like that. These guys are going to be cornerstones of our team for years to come.
Yeah,
or maybe 2 years, 3 years, and they out they go. I think it's crazy, man. But what would be? So you said you went to stadiums, right? Could you compare?
Yeah.
How would you compare the old the when you first went to start going to the games to now with the canopy and it's tricked out? What would you say is a big difference besides the heat, obviously?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, man, the old version of Hard Rock, which was Joe Robbie and Pro Player and all those other things, like, it was like a Dodge Neon, and now the stadium, it's like a Range Rover. Like it's just it's got all the amenities, it's a totally different environment. But one thing I will say that makes it kind of cool with the fan experience is when you pack Hard Rock Stadium nowadays, even though there's fewer seats than there were back in the day, because there used to be like, I don't know, close to 80,000. Now there's under 70,000 because they, spread everything out and all that. But with that canopy that they have overhead, it traps in a lot of the fan noise. The building has gotten louder, right? When you get some of these big Dolphin games, playoff on the line and stuff like that, and sellout crowd, and they're going crazy. And, one of the best experiences I've had in recent memory was going to the Miami Hurricanes versus Notre Dame game at that stadium, which was one of the probably the loudest I've ever heard that stadium. So I think it's really cool how, listen, man, like these days, obviously you're paying a lot more for a ticket, but the stadium's a lot nicer than it used to be. But, going back to the old days and not just Hard Rock Stadium, but, you mentioned the Orange Bowl era. Obviously I missed that era for the Dolphins, but I didn't miss it for the Hurricanes. So I went to, I don't know, probably 60, 70 games in my life at the OB before they tore it down. And that was like a different animal, because back then, like we're talking pre-2000, we didn't know what we didn't know. Like we didn't know how nice stadiums were going to get. Like the bathrooms were terrible. Only half the urinals worked. And, the place was, kind of a dump, and it was almost falling apart at that point. But we just knew like it was our stadium. Like that stadium belonged to Miami, and that place was loud because it had like a metal steel frame, not like concrete. And so the sound would vibrate, and like everything would just be captured by this. We called the Orange Bowl the Old Lady back in the day, is what we used to call it.
Wow,
and
nice.
Like the Old Lady was just a magical place to watch football, and there was nothing else like it. Like, obviously nobody's been there since I think 2007 was the last ride. So it's been, like, well, I'm 16 years. My math is not my strong suit, but so like nobody's been in there in 16 years. So all we have are the memories, but the memories I have of that place were just loud and magic, especially on night games.
Yeah, I remember going to the Orange Bowl one time, and that was for a high school state championship. It was Northwestern versus Carol City. Nice. And I really don't remember too much because I was sipping on Grandpa's cough syrup. And you know what I mean? But no, but I did. One of the things I liked about when I started doing this, I like to highlight certain things. And my second guest, he was from Chicago, so I highlighted the '85 Bears game. Okay, so I sat down on YouTube and I watched the game. Which one thing about YouTube, you could watch just about any Dolphin game rewatch. You know what I mean? No commercials. What's funny is O.J. Simpson was calling the game. Joe Namath was calling the game, and
Wow.
and yeah, Frank Gifford. It was Frank Gifford and Joe Namath.
I remember that was
And
the old
O.J.
Monday
Simpson.
Night Crew. I remember that old Monday Night Crew now.
Yeah, and I remember the one thing that stood out to me was there was no play clock because the fans were so loud in that stadium that the guys couldn't hear what, and they were trying to plead to the Dolphin fans to quiet down, but they, of course, they weren't doing that. You know what I mean?
Wow.
It was awesome.
Yeah, one of my best memories, and I didn't attend this game, but this was one of the first games that I remember like really being all in on the Dolphins. And I think the game was at home because I think I remember there being a clay infield, which would have been at the old, Pro Player Stadium when they used to share it with the Marlins. But it was 94, Marino coming off the Achilles, the comeback against New England, Irving Fryer. So I think I was in fourth grade for that game. And like I mentioned, my my hardcore Dolphins fandom was staggered a little bit behind my hardcore Hurricanes fandom, where I started to really be old enough to love the Canes in around 91. Gino Torretta, that was one of my first like greats. I was born in 84, but like 91 was when I could really kind of understand the game and get into it. And then for the Dolphins, it was like 93 and 94, and then 94 Marino to Fryer. And he had like not a very good preseason coming off the Achilles, so people were worried. Like, is Marino ever going to be back? Is he ever going to be the same guy again? And then that performance and that comeback, I can remember I was over at a friend's house who lived down the street from me. And he and his family, they were like insane. Like he had like his father was like the type, he'd probably like blend his own margaritas and he'd get like, really hammered during games. He'd be cooking sausages out on the grill out back. He was like yelling. Like I heard words at my buddy's house that I never heard anywhere else because his dad was yelling. Like my parents like never cursed, no profanities or anything. And then my buddy's dad was like yelling out F-bombs all during the game because that game was all nip and tuck and the Dolphins had to come back and win. And I can just remember when Marino connected with Fryer, everyone at his house, his drunk dad, his mom, his sister, his younger brother, me and my buddy, we're all high-fiving and hugging each other and going crazy. We're yelling and screaming because we knew we had just watched something special, right? And so like I remember that being like one of the real turning points where I'm like, you know what? I'm all in with the NFL now. Like I'm fully bought in with this, and I'm gonna, because I watched the Dolphins before then, but more kind of casually. And at that point, I'm like, all right, this is gonna be a regular thing for me now.
Yep, and unfortunately, the next 20 years happened, but
the next 30 years, really, since that 29 years.
Wow. But so let me ask you, what how did you? One thing I'm gonna give you your cigars. You don't have to say flowers. I say cigars. I'm gonna give you cigars. One thing I enjoyed about your content is I could tell you're a radio guy, and radio. To be honest with you, radio people is a dying art form. I'm a big fan of Howard Stern, Neil Rogers, Phil Henry. I love radio. I mean, Bubba the Love Sponge, and
those are all people I've listened to over the years, which is great.
Yeah, and Jim Mandich, of course, God rest his soul. You know what I'm saying? And I could tell that the thing about what's killing radio, in my opinion, is you'll get a week of content and then a month of commercials.
Yeah,
I think that's what. But you know what I'm saying, and also now that someone like myself, we could do YouTube now, and then we're recording. But what made you into what got you into radio and doing Locked On Canes?
Yeah, I mean, starting out because, like you mentioned, my background is in radio. It was a lot of the names you mentioned. I didn't start listening to Stern until later in life when I was kind of already into it. But I grew up on Hank, the Mad Dog, Mandich. I grew up on Neil Rogers, and it was just there was just something so, and it still is this way, but back then there was just something so intimate about the medium, right? Radio, like not
Yeah.
only because I would listen in my father's car, like he would usually have either WQAM on in the car, or he would have 610 back when 610 had sports, like before QAM even became a thing. There were sports shows on 610. We would listen in his car, and it just like, I don't know, there was just something about somebody just over your speaker having a conversation with you, talking about the game last night. Because this was before it was like, some of these listening for me was before the internet was even around. But then, back then we didn't use the World Wide Web to get all these sports stories the way that we use it now. So that was like my local sports fix, because I watched ESPN as well, but that was always a national thing, Sports Center. So just hearing some dude on the radio for 3 hours taking calls and talking about the Dolphins and talking about the Heat and the Canes, there was just something really special about that. And I think I fell in love with the conversations and the interactions. Like even back then, like I used to send faxes to Jim Mandich. And then a little bit later, I used to send emails to Jim, and I used to send like emails to like the Boog Shambi show when he was on QAM, and then on 790 a little bit later. And when I remember like when they would actually respond to I don't even know if it was them responding or if it was a producer or something, but when they would respond to an email or read an email on the show, I'm like, oh, this is the best thing ever. I've made it. Like, this is so cool. So I just kind of I fell in love with the art of conversation and with telling stories. And then, you talked about, podcasting and YouTube and radio. Unfortunately, radio as we know it, and I still do some of it, but radio, it's been dying a slow death for a handful of years now, because like the podcasting medium and the YouTube medium, and like I do a lot of YouTube shows for podcast. I'm sure you do as well, where you kind of double it up. But just like the opportunity that it gives me, especially the way that I do Locked On Canes, for example, is more of a short form, like, half-hour episodes instead of 4-hour episodes, less commercials. But I try to give out 3-4 hours worth of information in 30 minutes, because society's become so ADD that I don't think you necessarily radio works because you're getting in and out of your car. You may catch 20 minutes, 30 minutes of a 4-hour show. So it works for that reason. But for people that are like seeking out content on the internet, if you can pull up somebody like me spewing out observations and stats and a couple jokes here and there for 25 minutes instead of having to sit through 4 hours, there's just something different about that medium. And I think that's one of the reasons why, unfortunately, there's just not the same audience for traditional radio. And I still love it, and I still do it, and I hope it sticks around. And also, to be fair, the radio business it's pivoting into a lot of that digital stuff, because you can get every show on a podcast, and every show is posting short clips, which is kind of the way people seek things out these days. And like a lot of the shows on QAM do YouTube videos now. So they're dipping their toe, and they're evolving with the business now. But, radio, as I used to know it in the 90s and the early 2000s, it's just not the same as it used to be.
Well, I know people that's out of town that listen to Joe Rose because of the internet. So
yeah,
they're getting a different viewership, but what kind of sucks for them is because a lot of their sponsors are local. You know what I mean? So they're not gonna, like, for instance, Sedano's. You're not gonna find us. Let's say Sedano's advertises them. You're not gonna find one in Minnesota.
Yeah, right. And all the local car dealerships and stuff. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to. And Joe, I love Joe, and I'm actually, let me plug this. I'm gonna be co-hosting with Joe tomorrow. I'm gonna be on with Joe 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. tomorrow. I respect Joe so much because he puts in so much work into being a sports guy. Like, cause he goes out to high school football games, which, outside of people like Larry Bluestein, who specialize in that, you don't have anybody else going out to high school games but Joe. Like, he cares that much. He goes out to high school games. He goes out to games for all the teams. He talks with all the coaches and the GMs and stuff. Like, I don't know. He's such a hardcore sports guy. And you don't have a lot of those anymore. And he puts so much work and time into it. So I respect him so much.
Actually, do you think Joe Rose would have made it in today or not Joe Rose, Jim Mandich? Because I remember Jim Mandich, man. This guy had, as the Cubans say, no hair on his tongue, no tenía pelo en la lengua. That guy was brutally honest.
Yeah, and which I appreciated it. He would probably have had to evolve his style a little bit. Same thing with Hank Goldberg, and it's not a slight to anybody because those were like gold standards. But like you could say things and talk about things from perspectives back then you just can't do today. So I don't. It's one of those things. It's like you couldn't do those exact shows today. Neil Rogers. Forget about it. Like you couldn't do that. Like he was saying things on AM radio that you can't say, you can't say today. So it's just a totally different time.
By the way, I know Locked On because I listen to Locked On Gators just every day. You guys probably do like maybe 2, 1 or 3 30-second spots, and because of him, I'm
those are the best. Oh my
they
goodness.
are. I was very hesitant because you go to Sam's. I get them from Sam's, and they're so much better, more inexpensive. You get 12 for like $20 or something like that.
Wow.
And the thing I like about it is I was real hesitant, but he kept talking about it. So because usually when you try those things, they taste like chalk.
Right.
This actually tastes like chocolate.
Yeah. Right. It's real. I mean, it's 100% real chocolate. And the thing about Built Bars for me is I'm not a big breakfast eater, never have been. But it's good to have something in your stomach in the morning, especially when you wake up early like I do pretty much every day. Like I can't just fast until lunch necessarily. I've tried it. It's not always putting me in the best mood. But then also like I've been watching my weight for like the past year and a half. I used to be about 250. Now I'm in the 190 range. So I've completely changed my body composition, and it's kind of like I kind of made it into a lifestyle. And I can eat these Built Bars in the morning. I can eat one Built Bar in the morning. It fills me up. I drink a lot of coffee too, but the Built Bar, it tastes really good and it fills me up enough until lunchtime. And so it's something that really works for me because anything else, it's like, I can't eat a big breakfast every day. That just doesn't work for me. But the Built Bar is like the perfect thing.
So, all right. I know you don't have that much time. So I like to do a game, a numbers game, right? I'm going to spit out 5 numbers. Maybe I get some help here. Sometimes Chad helps me. Sometimes I gotta think of the numbers on my own. I'm gonna name out 5 numbers, right? Chad, spit out some numbers here. If not, I'll do some, and you tell me the first Miami Dolphin player you think of.
Oh, I can already tell you this is not going to go well because I'm not a big numbers guy. But I will
trust
try.
Me. Trust me. You're not the first or the last.
Okay.
I did a pre-recorded with Stephen D. He didn't do that well. Actually, he did pretty well because I told him 88, and he was the first person to tell me Chris Carter. So I'll give him props on that.
Yeah.
All right, number 29.
I know it was either Sam or Pat. So that was Sam, right? Sam Madison?
Correct. Sam Madison was 23.
29. Oh, so that was Pat that was 29.
No, Sam Madison was 29.
Okay,
Pat was 23.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm glad I got that one right because that one, I'm never gonna forget 29.
Okay, all right, okay, 19.
Oh, Ted Ginn.
And damn, see, this is what surprises me because I know a lot of Miami fans still hold Ohio State still a little bitter towards Ohio State because of that national championship.
Yeah, here's my thing. I'm not that but I'm not that bitter towards Ohio State because it was the referee's fault. It was Terry Porter's fault. I will never forget that name, by the way. Like how often am I going to remember the specific referee of a specific game? But I will never forget Terry Porter was the official who threw that flag in the end zone. That's where my beef is. Like it wasn't Ohio State that did that.
Yeah.
Like, they were the beneficiaries of that bad call, but my beef is with Terry Porter.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you guys would have beaten them 41-14 like we did, wouldn't have made no difference. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
We should have beaten them by, we should have beaten
Number
them.
8. All right, 80.
8. See, I'm already struggling. 80.
Okay, there's no right or wrong answer. Just give me the person you think of.
Was Anthony Fasano? Was he 80?
Yes, he was.
I'm a little bit better. I'm a little bit better at this than I thought.
All right, number 10, and don't say Hill. You can't say Hill. 10.
Okay, if I can't say Hill, gosh, number 10. I'm thinking that's got to be, man. I'm stumped. If I can't say Cheetah, I'm stumped on 10. Give me a Dolphins 10. Ooh.
All right, I'll give you a hint. He wasn't originally a Dolphin. He played for the Jets.
Ooh. Is it my guy Barrios? Does he wear 10?
No.
Huh.
They don't have numbers now. Do they have numbers?
I don't know. I don't think he does have a number yet. You're right.
I was thinking about Chad Pennington.
Oh, See, I'm terrible at this. I thought I was doing well. I threw you a Fasano, and then I couldn't remember Chad Pennington.
Yeah.
that was probably, I guess you could say Tua last year. But prior to Tua last year, Pennington, that 2008 season, was the single best quarterbacked season the Dolphins have had since number 13. That one I know.
All right, and we're at what? We got 2 more. 1 more. How many we got here? We did 10 again. We did number 80. We got 1 more. I'm going to say 51.
Ooh, 51. Obviously, I'm thinking of a linebacker here. 51. Did Cox wear 51?
You're correct.
Yes.
And by the way, I would accept that Mike Pouncey. You know what school he played for.
Yeah, and I like Pouncey. I like Pouncey. He was a good dude.
By the way, how are you on for time? By the way,
I can give you 10 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. Then, I usually, all right, here we go. This is real quickly. What we do is every guest builds their ultimate Dolphin team. So you get to pick the quarterback. Yeah. The only rule is they had to be a Dolphin for a year.
Okay. Well, easy quarterback, very easy. Dan Marino. Who do you want? What position you want next?
Okay. What formation you running?
I'm gonna go. Probably, can I go 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 run? I mean, I could, I could do 2 receivers, tight end. I could give you a fullback and a running back if I want to go old school.
Okay.
Because I was a big fan of Rob Conrad when he played fullback for the Dolphins.
And I said this story before. I remember when I was, I used to work at Albertsons as a meat cutter or whatever, and I saw him with his mom shopping. That dude was freaking huge, man.
He was a monster. Yeah. I loved I was a big Rob Conrad fan. Like I don't know why. I mean, he's a good player, but I was a big Rob Conrad fan. My running back,
no one chooses George Lucas for some reason.
Really?
Go ahead. Yeah,
my running back, Ricky Williams, the best running back to ever put on a Dolphins uniform, and it's not particularly close. Okay. For my receivers,
fullback is Conrad, right?
Fullback is Conrad, yeah.
Okay. Tight end,
that's a little bit of a tougher one because I'm gonna go with Randy McMichael.
The Bullfrog.
That's probably not the best answer because I could have gone Mandich or Joe Rose, who I'm host. You know what? Maybe I should go Joe because I'm going to be co-hosting with Joe Rose.
Okay, that's what's up.
I'm going to go with Joe Rose.
Hey, by the way, one thing I miss about Joe Rose, before the game, 15 minutes, like, let's say if the game started at 1, I think around 10 o'clock, the Dolphins social media will go live with a cup of Joe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
They haven't done that in a while, but I missed that. All right, who are your 2 receivers?
My 2 receivers, I'm going to go with Duper and Clayton.
The Marks brothers?
Yeah, obviously, I could give some love to Cheetah, who did spend 1 full year so far with the Dolphins, but I'm going to go back to the good old days with Duper and Clayton.
All right, offensive line, we could go by position, or we could go decade because, O-line people, too many people are into trench play like that. Well, you know what I mean?
Without even thinking about it, Richmond Webb definitely gets in.
Webb.
Tim Ruddy at center. I may not be so strict with positions here,
Okay.
but I did. Tim Ruddy and Richmond Webb are in 1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go. I liked who else did I like as far as well, why am I drawing a blank here? I got to give some love to Laramie Tunsil because he was
Yeah, he gave us all those hauls.
He was good. He was good in a Dolphins uniform. He gave us all that magic. I'm going to throw Pouncey in there. I know I got two centers in there now.
He was a guard. He was a guard.
He was a guard too. I'm going to throw Pouncey in there. And then who would be my fifth? This is harder because we've had so many disappointing O-lines over the years. Who would be my fifth? I don't know.
Incognito?
Oh, I was a huge fan of his. I'll go Incognito to round out the list because he was excellent. And I know that there was the whole scandal, but the years that I covered Richie Incognito in the locker room, I found him to be a pretty well-spoken, interesting, fascinating guy. Before he kind of gone crazy in recent years, apparently, with some of the off the field stuff. But I was a huge fan of Incognito.
All right, now let's do your 4-3, and I know. Look, I'm already writing it down. I don't have to say your Hurricane defensive coach Jason Taylor as your defensive end.
Oh, for sure. He's a Hurricanes legend first and a Dolphins legend second. I don't know if you knew that.
Okay, yeah, I do know now.
I was also a big fan for the other end, Adewale Ogunleye. I'm a big fan of. I was thinking of Cam Wake. You know what? I'm thinking out loud here. I'm going to go Cam Wake over Wale because Wake had an incredible career here. For my
4-3 or 3-4.
Let's go 4-3.
Okay,
let's go 4-3. Daryl Gardner is going to get in there.
I love that dude. I used to work at the stadium, and when I met him, he was a mountain of a man. Holy moly!
And Tim Bowens was another one that I loved.
Okay, Bowens.
Yeah.
Both Jimmy Johnson guys, right? Or both? I think both played for Jimmy Johnson at one time.
Oh, and that's not a coincidence because those were, tail end of Shula and then the early days of Jimmy were when I was like at my most hardcore, like as a youth watching the Dolphins. Linebackers, obviously Zach Thomas is in there. I'm going to put Brian Cox in there.
Okay.
And I'm going to put, I've got to give some love to my guy Offerdahl, who helped
Thomas.
make me a Dolphin.
Who's the middle?
I'll go with Zach in the middle. So I know I'm going a little bit positionless here, but I'll go Zach in the middle. Yeah.
And then Arfadal.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm gonna be doing the brackets for the first round, and I'm gonna put you up against Stephen D.
So. Okay, I like that.
All right, who are your cornerbacks and safeties?
Pretty easy. It's going to be a lot of the guys who played in a similar era. I'm going Madison and Surtain as my corners. And
you're going for the Seminoles coach?
Yeah, you had to remind me of that. Listen, any team is lucky to have Surtain coach in their secondary. He's awesome. And then I'm going to go with Brock Marion is one of my safeties. And I'm gonna rattle the cage here a little bit. Part of this is gonna go on potential, but my guy Javon Holland, I'm gonna put him at a safety spot.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And before you go, before we get to the final thoughts, let me ask you something I've always asked people: who was your favorite person? Who was your favorite Gator or Seminole that played for the Dolphins? You hated on Saturdays, but you root for on Sunday.
For the Gators, don't have to think much about that one. Channing Crowder, he's an incredible guy.
Oh, yeah.
I've had a chance to get to know him over the years. Seminoles, I got to think about that a little bit harder. I hate them so much. Give me some Seminoles who played for the Dolphins if you could think of any.
The only two I could think of is Travis Minor and Buckley. Terrell Buckley, he was a Seminole.
I'll go with Buckley. I forgot that he was a Seminole because Travis Minor was here for a couple of years. It is what it is. There's more. There was another running back, Lorenzo something, who played. I remember when he was drafted.
According to him, Trace Armstrong.
Oh, wow.
But you know what's funny is you got to think about this. The two errors where Buffalo Bills are killing us, right? It was two Canes quarterbacks. You got Jim Kelly and Ken Dorsey.
Yep.
For Buffalo Bills. Ain't that something?
Mm-hmm. By the way, Lorenzo Booker, somebody writes in, was the guy I was thinking of. Yeah, I covered him after he was drafted. But yeah, again, he was an okay player. Wasn't that great of a player. So yeah, I'll go with Terrell Buckley.
Hey man, I know you're on time. Thank you so much for stopping by. Where can we find you at, man? I definitely want to know.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the shot, Lorenzo Booker. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, so 2 or 3 days a week, you three on a good week. I talk Dolphins on the 5 Reasons Sports Network with a former Miami Dolphin, which is
there a certain time frame?
Bradford. Yeah, so we do 4 p.m. Always on Mondays, and we try to do Thursdays and Fridays. Didn't do one today because Troy is a big Mets fan, and he wanted to go out to the game today. And I didn't check the final score, but I think the Mets they were up 5-3 in the 9th. So I don't know if they held on and won or not, but so Troy's probably going to go home happy today. And yeah, every single day, sometimes 3-4 times a day, I'm all over Locked On Canes. So for those who are Canes fans, Shake, you can cover your ears. And if you're a Gator fan, my dude Brandon Olson does an awesome job on Locked On Gators. So it's all in the family.
Hey.
I mean, Brandon, we talk a lot of trash back and forth, he and I, but it's all love.
By the way, I could attest to that. He does do great work. By the way, I don't know. Next year, we play you guys next year, right?
2024, actually.
2024.
Yeah,
So that's that's next year, ain't it? Whatever.
No, next
either way,
2023. Yeah. So you got.
All I know, I don't know what I'm looking forward to, the game or the crossover.
The crossover is going to be epic. Yeah, you know what's funny, because like so on the Locked On Network, it's like customary to do crossovers like with the hosts from the other teams. And since Brandon and I didn't get to do one last year because we didn't play each other, we did a recruiting crossover because
I've seen it.
Yeah, because Miami and Florida were competing for so many of the same recruits that we really wanted to do a show together. So we did a recruiting crossover, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, and we neither of us got who was that quarterback that ended up going to Arizona?
Rashada. That was crazy.
Yeah, no, neither one of us got him. So
and it was so great because both sides trash talked each other so much and nobody won because people thought he was going to commit to Florida at first. He committed to Miami. Canes fans were talking trash. He flipped to Florida. Gators fans are talking trash. Then he didn't sign his letter or he did sign it, but he got out of his letter. He went to Arizona State. We all lose, but we all talk the trash. You can't take that back.
Yeah, and you know what? And one thing I agree with you wholeheartedly is, look, just because he's not a Gator anymore, I'm not going to talk ill will of him. I wish him nothing but success. Like you said, we got to be, we can't fault a player for doing something that's best for him. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I'm a Gators fan, but at the same time, we got to realize this is a people business. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The episode that I did on Locked On Canes, talking about Jaden Rashada after he had already left the Canes. When he left the Gators, the episode that I did about that was my most viewed episode on YouTube ever. And I think it was at like 40,000. So it was crazy. Like, and that just goes to show you how big of a story that was. That, like, an episode that I did about a guy who no longer committed to my team and then decommitted from the Gators, that was my most watched on YouTube episode that I've ever done, was an episode about Jaden Rashada. So that goes to show what a big story that was when he left Florida after leaving Miami.
I don't know. I'm still heartbroken. Hey, we still got DJ Lagway. So, all right, man.
He's great. Yeah.
All right, man. Once again, I appreciate you for coming by, man. And I hope to get you in season 2 next year.
Thank you so much, man. I'm down.
All right, man. Be safe, man.
You too. Thank you.
And that was Alex Donno, man. I'd like to thank him. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. And it was a great show. Like I said, man, I appreciate everybody who showed up. Like Anthony, I don't want to. How do you phonetically pronounce your name? If you could put it in the chat, please let me know. I don't want to butcher your name, please. Crypto. Richard, what's going on? Cat for Life, my brother Louis Amador. I appreciate every one of you, man. Thank you so much. And this is another episode of In the Blender with Shake Money. I am your host. I'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, I am going to be on the Finn's Tailgate this Saturday night and tomorrow night. So catch me there with my homeboy Louis. Y'all be safe now. Fins up.